When Ethan proposed, it was quiet and personal, just us, a fire pit, and a bottle of wine in the backyard. He said, "You're my best decision," and I couldn't stop smiling for 2 days straight. After 6 years together, we finally had a moment that belonged only to us. The next morning, I called my dad. I wanted to share the news before posting anything online. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd say something warm, something proud. He picked up on the third ring. "Hey, kid," he said, casual as ever. "Hi, Dad," I replied, already grinning. "I have news. Ethan proposed last night." A pause, long enough to break the warmth in my chest. Then, "You're really doing this?" Even though Haley just got dumped. The silence on my end was thick. I blinked. "Wait, what?" "She's not in a good place right now," he said. Like it explained everything. Breakup hit her hard. And now this. I think it's a good time to be celebrating. Like I was flaunting my happiness. Like I was cruel for saying yes to the man I love. I tried to keep my voice steady. I didn't even know she and Brent had broken up. "Well, she didn't tell you because she knew how you'd react," he said. "She's vulnerable right now. This kind of news could set her off." "Set her off, Dad," I said slowly. "Are you seriously suggesting I hold off on being happy 'cause Haley's sad?" "I'm saying timing matters. Maybe wait to announce it. Or push the wedding, just for a while, for her sake." My throat tightened. Ethan and I have waited 6 years. We're not putting our lives on pause again. His sigh came heavy through the phone. "It's not always about you, Rachel." But it never was. Not when she was around. We hung up a few minutes later, the call ending with a forced talk later. I didn't tell Ethan right away. I just stared out the window, my ring catching sunlight I wasn't sure I deserved anymore. I thought he'd be happy for me. Instead, he made it about her like always. I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was just one of Dad's tone-deaf moments. Maybe he'd come around. Ethan and I spent the weekend dreaming about venues and guest lists. We weren't planning anything extravagant, just something warm and honest. Portland in early spring could be beautiful with tulips pushing through and soft overcast skies. It felt right. By Monday evening, I was starting to breathe again. That's when the phone rang. "Dad, again." I answered even though my gut told me not to. "Hey," he started too casually. "I've been thinking. That was never good." He continued. "Your sister is hurting. A wedding now would be insensitive." I stared at the wall. "Excuse me, she's grieving, Rachel. Brent moving out, he left a hole in her life. And now she's going to have to watch her sister parade around in white like nothing's wrong." "Parade," I echoed. "You know what I mean. I'm just saying maybe push the wedding, or scale it down, keep it simple, private, low profile." My jaw clenched. "Like hide it." "For now," he said. "Just until Haley's back on her feet." I walked into the kitchen and sat down, pressing the phone between my shoulder and ear. "Dad, she was dating that guy for 7 months. Ethan and I have been together for 6 years. He didn't respond. "This isn't about timing," I said. "It's about priority. You want me to put my life on pause to protect her feelings. She's fragile, Rachel, and I'm reliable, disposable." He sighed. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." Ethan came into the room, saw my face, and didn't say a word. Just rested a hand on my shoulder. His eyes were asking. I shook my head. I didn't blow up. I didn't argue. I just said, "We're moving forward with the wedding." Another pause. Then coolly, "I see." When I hung up, my hands were shaking. Not from rage, but from the ache of almost giving in. For a second, I'd actually considered it. He didn't ask. He expected me to obey. And I almost did. When I was 10, Dad forgot my birthday. Completely. No card, no cake, just a late night. "Oh shoot, Rach, I'll make it up to you." I told him it was fine. I even smiled. 2 weeks later, Haley had a princess-themed party with a magician pony rides and a backyard full of glitter. She turned 5. When I got a full scholarship to Oregon State, he said, "That's great," without looking up from the TV. When Haley got her driver's license on the 3rd try, he handed her the keys to Mom's old car with tears in his eyes and said, You're growing up too fast. The thing is, I didn't notice it then. Not really. I thought being the strong one was a compliment. I thought my silence was maturity. Dad used to say, "You're stronger, she's delicate." So I kept being strong. I swallowed disappointments. I picked up her slack. I covered when she forgot birthdays, bailed on commitments, blew through money. When she dropped out of college, Dad said, "She needs time." When I got promoted at work, he said, "Don't rub it in." It wasn't until Ethan pointed it out subtly, kindly, that I realized how deep it went. "You shrink around him," he said once after a family dinner, "like you're afraid to take up space." I had laughed. That's just how he is. But lately, I couldn't unsee it. Every time I shared good news, I braced for guilt. Every smile I earned came with a condition. Be smaller, be quieter, don't upset the balance. And now my wedding, my own marriage, was being framed as selfish, because Haley's feelings were sacred, and mine inconvenient. I looked in the mirror that night and saw someone exhausted from being reasonable. I wasn't angry, I was done. Done earning what should have been freely given. Done folding myself in half to keep the peace. This wasn't about a wedding, it was about who I was finally refusing to be. Thanksgiving at Aunt Diane's was always a crowded affair, kids running between legs, gravy spilled on heirloom tablecloths, paper turkeys taped to windows. It used to feel like home. This year, it felt like a test. Ethan and I showed up with a bottle of red and a pecan tart. Haley was already there, seated beside Dad, like a fragile ornament. She barely looked at me. We made it through appetizers. I almost let it go. But then Aunt Diane asked, "So Rachel, how's wedding planning going?" I smiled politely. "Good. We toured the venue last week. Spring in the Willamette Valley is..." A sharp inhale cut me off. Haley was blinking, fast lips trembling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I can't," she stood suddenly and walked out. Arms wrapped around herself like armor. Everyone froze. Dad stood next. "Nice job, Rachel." My mouth dropped. "What? You couldn't wait, could you? Had to make this day about you?" I was answering a question. She's not ready for all this. She's barely keeping it together. She doesn't have to come to the wedding, I said, trying to keep my voice level. But I'm allowed to plan my own life. His face turned red. "You're tearing this family apart." No one said anything. Forks clinked. Someone cleared their throat. Aunt Diane murmured, "Frank, that's enough." But the damage was done. I sat down slowly, my heart pounding against my ribs. Ethan reached under the table and squeezed my knee. I scanned the faces around the room. Some avoided eye contact. Some looked confused. But what caught me most was the pity. And for once, it wasn't for Haley. It was for me. I helped clear the dishes. I said goodbye with a smile. I hugged Haley lightly when she returned red-eyed and silent. But that night when we got home, I didn't cry. I didn't vent. I didn't ask Ethan if I was being too much. I pulled out a notepad and drew a line down the middle. On one side I wrote, "People who want me happy." On the other, "People who want me small." That night, I didn't cry. I made a list and drew the line. It took me 3 weeks to write the email, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I kept editing myself down, softening, shrinking, second-guessing whether I was allowed to name the harm out loud. Ethan watched me spiral one night after dinner, deleting and rewriting the same 2 sentences. He took the laptop gently from my hands, closed it, and said, "It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be true." So the next morning, I poured black coffee, opened a blank draft, and told the truth. I started with, "This is hard to write." Then, "I love you, but I also need peace." I didn't make it emotional. I made it clear. I talked about the Thanksgiving moment, about years of being the afterthought, the strong one expected to tolerate everything. I explained that the wedding was not a public therapy session for Haley's heartbreak, and I would not keep shrinking to make space for her fragility. And finally, I wrote, "Because of the pattern of guilt, emotional manipulation, and the refusal to respect my boundaries, I've decided not to include you or Haley in the wedding. This isn't punishment, it's protection. I reread it 10 times. Ethan didn't ask to see it, but when I finished, I told him. He stood behind me, wrapped his arms around my shoulders, and kissed the top of my head. "You're brave," he said. "I'm scared," I admitted. He nodded. "That's what makes it brave." I clicked send, and then I sat there shaking, not from guilt, but from the weight of years finally sliding off my back. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful, not yet. It was heavy, echoing with all the things I had tolerated for far too long. I didn't know what their reaction would be. I didn't know if they'd show up anyway, but I knew this: I didn't burn the bridge. I just stopped fixing it. The reply came 3 hours later. I heard the chime and knew without looking that it was him. Subject: extremely disappointed. The message started civil, measured even. That didn't last. I can't believe you'd humiliate this family like this. You've chosen a man over your blood. Your mother would be ashamed. I didn't raise you to be this cold. Cold. Because I finally drew a boundary. Because I finally said enough. I read it 3 times, hoping the words would sting less. They didn't. Then I forwarded it to myself just to make sure I'd never doubt what was said when memory started to soften it. Haley's text started next. Paragraphs of wounded poetry. I was just being honest about how I felt, and now you're punishing me. I always looked up to you. You're ruining everything. She ended one with, I guess you were always better at pretending to be the good daughter. I didn't reply. But the silence didn't stay private. Cousin Trevor called that night to talk me off the ledge, saying maybe I'd overreacted, that Dad was just old school. Someone else sent a group text about family unity and making peace before it's too late. It wasn't a split, it was a fracture. Quiet and slow at first, then loud and jagged. But in the middle of it, my phone rang again. Aunt Diane. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't ask what happened. She just said, I see you now. You're not wrong. I sat on the kitchen floor and cried into a dish towel. Not because I was broken, but because someone finally saw me whole. Diane didn't offer advice or try to smooth it over. She just said, I always knew you were the steady one. I didn't realize how much that cost you. We talked for 20 minutes. I never brought up the wedding. She didn't ask. We just talked like people who remembered we were more than the roles we were forced into. For every door that slammed, another cracked open. Ethan's phone buzzed again during dinner. He barely glanced at it before flipping it over and setting it face down. His jaw tightened the way it always did when he was trying not to upset me. Haley again, I asked, though I already knew. He nodded, poking at the food on his plate. She's been texting all day. I set down my fork. What does she want? She said she needed someone to talk to, that she's spiraling, and that I'm the only one who ever treated her with kindness. I didn't respond at first. I wanted to believe it was desperation, not calculation, but deep down, I already knew which it was. Can I see them? I asked gently. He handed me the phone. The first message had come at 8:14 a.m. I know I've made mistakes. I just feel so alone right now. Then you've always been calm, like safe. It's nice to talk to someone who listens. By noon, she pushed further. Sometimes I wonder if you and I understand each other in ways Rachel never really sees. I scrolled down, my chest tightening. And then came the final one. I think we have something Rachel doesn't see. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't even clever. It was a direct betrayal, aimed like a weapon she thought I wouldn't notice or maybe wouldn't dare confront. I looked up at Ethan. His face was unreadable. I haven't replied, he said. Not once. I believed him. I always did. I walked to the kitchen in silence, pulled out my laptop, and forwarded every message to myself. Screenshots, timestamps, receipts. Then I opened a new email addressed to my father, Aunt Diane, and 2 relatives who had been neutral during all of this. Subject: this is why. Body attached are recent messages Haley sent Ethan. I'm not looking for validation. I'm sharing them so no one can say they didn't know. We've tolerated guilt, gaslighting, and emotional manipulation for years. But this crossed a line. This is no longer about a wedding. This is about boundaries and safety. I clicked send, blocked Haley's number on both our phones, and called the venue. I added her and my father to the do not admit list. I also added one more line to our security contract. No exceptions, no negotiations. Then I turned off my phone, poured Ethan a glass of wine, and sat beside him on the couch like nothing had happened. Because that was the moment I finally stopped reacting. She wasn't just entitled, she was dangerous. The morning of the wedding was still, almost suspiciously still, the kind of quiet that made me wonder if the storm had passed or was just holding its breath. Our venue was nestled in Oregon wine country, wrapped in morning fog and rows of new green. The floral team arrived at dawn, setting up soft white blooms around the arch. The air smelled like rosemary and new beginnings. My bridesmaids kept things light. Ethan sent me a handwritten note folded neatly with a ribbon. You chose peace, and you chose me. I'll never let you forget your power. I had just finished my makeup when Amanda, my maid of honor, stepped into the bridal suite with a look I recognized instantly, tight lips, wide eyes. They're here, she said. I didn't need to ask who. Security stopped them at the front gate. Your dad's yelling, Haley's crying. The venue manager is asking if you want the cops called. I stood up slowly, smoothed the skirt of my dress. No police, I said. But they don't come in. Not one step. That's non-negotiable. Amanda nodded. Already told them. I walked to the window. I could see the gravel road from there just beyond the vineyards. A blur of movement. A hand waving, a familiar stance. But they were distant, locked out. By design. Aunt Diane appeared a few minutes later, her silver hair pinned back. Her eyes kind. Ready. I linked my arm through hers. More than ever. When the music started, it was like someone cracked the sky open. The clouds pulled back. Light poured through the trees. Every face turned toward me, but I didn't search for anyone. I didn't need validation, I just walked. I walked past the absence, past the noise they tried to bring, past every version of myself that had begged to be chosen. Ethan waited for me at the altar, teary-eyed, steady. I reached him and didn't look back. Not once. Later, I'd learned that Haley had screamed, "You'll regret this," before storming off. That Frank refused to get back in the car until security threatened to tow it. But I wasn't there for any of it. He gave me life, but I walked into it on my own terms. 3 days after the wedding, I was sorting through cards in our living room, stacked envelopes, tissue paper, the soft smell of leftover florals still clinging to my hair, when my phone buzzed. Allie, my cousin, my accidental informant. The only one in the family who hadn't picked a side, just quietly watched everyone ruin their own reputations. I answered on speaker. Hey, what's up? You sitting down? She asked, her voice that mix of amused and exhausted. Kind of, I said, flipping over a card signed, "With love from the Thompsons." Well, Frank kicked Haley out. I stopped cold. Wait, what? Yup, full meltdown, screaming match. I guess it started when she asked why he didn't protect her at the wedding. She blamed him for not stopping you. My stomach turned. What did he say? Allie took a deep breath. Apparently, he said, and I quote, "Maybe Rachel just got tired of the theatrics." I blinked. I almost didn't believe it. She threw a vase, Allie added. Missed his head. He told her to pack her things. When she didn't, he packed them himself. My mouth was dry. And she left. She's staying with a friend, but yeah. He didn't back down, not this time. I couldn't speak for a moment. Look, I'm not calling to stir it up, Allie said. I just figured you deserve to know. After everything, you didn't have to fight her. She did what she always does, burns everything and acts shocked when it's ash. I swallowed. Thanks for telling me. Allie hesitated. You okay? I thought about it, then. Yeah, I really am. We hung up without ceremony. I stared at the stack of cards in front of me and picked up the one from Aunt Diane. Inside was a single sentence, pieces earned. And you earned it, sweetheart. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone a reaction. The golden child shattered the throne, all on her own. The ocean had washed us clean. Ethan and I spent our honeymoon in a quiet coastal town in Northern California. No cell service, no timelines. Just the sound of waves, the warmth of coffee, and mismatched mugs and laughter that didn't feel borrowed. When we returned home, Portland had that sharp winter light, sunny, but cold like a fresh page. I didn't turn my phone back on right away. The house was filled with traces of celebration florals, drawing upside down a leftover candle with our initials carved into the wax, a drawer of unopened cards. I moved slowly through it all. I wasn't rushing to rejoin the world. The world could wait. I deleted every message from Haley without reading them, blocked Dad's number, archived the emails. I didn't want closure. I wanted silence. I planted thyme and marigolds in our backyard, even though it wasn't planting season. Something about putting my hands in the soil felt right, like I was rooting myself in the life I chose. Ethan would catch me smiling for no reason and say, "There she is." And he was right. I was there now, fully. One afternoon, while tidying up the last of the wedding things, I found it. The RSVP card I had addressed to my father but never sent. His name written in gold ink. Blank response. No check mark for joyfully accepts. No regrets. I framed it, not out of spite, not for display, but to remember that some invitations are sacred and not everyone gets to receive them. I hung it beside the door in my office, quiet, private, a reminder that my boundaries weren't cruelty, they were clarity. He asked me to cancel my wedding, so I canceled his grip on my life instead.